Welcome back, Athletor Podcast. Here's the deal, man. Coach Sioredas, I am so impressed. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe it's because you guys are all the way out there and slow, where it's hard to get to, and it's insulated by mountains and water. But I knew over the last couple of years that you guys have been building. But I didn't know the extent at which you were building. And that's my ignorance, and I apologize for it. But I don't think I'm alone. Do you think I'm alone in my ignorance there?
I think we've been relatively quiet for the most part, by design, for sure. Our style has never been, to be loud and obnoxious and, look at us. We just want to put the work in and do it for the right reasons. And I think our results are starting to show and have been for a little bit. And it's been a fun ride, man. We're continuing to take steps forward. But like I said, we're doing it the right way with the right people. And that's probably what I'm most proud of.
What's that mean? Because everyone can say they're doing it the right way, but what the heck does that mean? Right? Because, and it might be different for different places and different people, but for Cal Poly, for your coaching staff, for your athletes, what is the right way?
So what that means for us is we have a set of core values, and we do not take risk. We do not waver. And that comes from the way we lead with my coaching staff, to the people we associate with, being our alumni and supporters, and down to recruiting, right? I mean, we don't take risk. It does not matter how competent you are in wrestling. If you're not checking these specific boxes, then it's not a fit. And we have to be okay with saying no. And we have, and it's paid off. And then we hold our guys accountable. We have a lot of fun. We wrestle hard. But, at the end of the day, we got to understand that the end of the day, it's not about winning wrestling matches, right? Like, our purpose is to create remarkable men for life after wrestling. When you leave our Cal Poly wrestling program after 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, you should be better because of it and be able to look back on your past experiences and have learned and grown so much as a man. Therefore, you can translate that into your employment, into your family life, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what it's always been about for us. Of course, we love to win. Of course, we love to compete at a high level, but we've never gauged our guys or our program success based on that solely. We just always come back to the criteria of our core values, which is attitude, effort, growth, and respect. And as long as our guys are putting forth their best effort and they have a great attitude and they're positive and we're learning and growing no matter what and respectful while we do this, then, we're always on the same page. And I think that's what it comes down to, just core value-based leadership and just sticking with it long term. We stumbled early on there, man, pretty bad. And we kept plowing forward. And I think you're starting to see the fruits of our labor, and not just from the last year or two. I mean, this is almost 7 years now. This is a sheer body of work.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's easy to say overnight success when you look at it from a very, finite, bookended kind of season, because it's pretty impressive that way. But what people don't see is the like when you buy a fixer-upper house, nobody really, there's no parade for the ripping out of the carpet, and there's no parade for pulling the drywall down to the studs. But that's kind of what you have to do. Am I right?
I think so. I think we're also learning and growing as leaders. And first thing you have to do is look yourself in the mirror, right? It's easy to start telling people what to do. It's very hard to lead by example and do it yourself. So that's where it starts. At least for me, I've spent a lot of time just trying to become better at what we do and surround myself with people that have done what we're trying to do, not just necessarily in the wrestling world, but also in the business world, in the nonprofit world with, administrators, et cetera. And all those things have been a huge help. But you're right. It was challenging for sure. Those first couple of years, it was, it's easy to lose sight when, wrestling's different, man. Like when you're losing, like you're getting beat up. I mean, they're shoving our heads down. They're shoving us out of bounds. I mean, that stuff hurts, right? And, and it's, and it's hard. It's very, very challenging. But I think when we look back, what we're most proud of is just that we never lost sight. right? Like we knew where we were going. We didn't know how long it was going to take. It did happen relatively fast. I think I'm in year 7 now, and taking a step back and saying, you know what, 5 years taking a program that was dead last into the top 25 is pretty impressive. And then in year 6, we break into the top 10. And now in year 7, we're, Pac-12 dual meet champions. Like, it's pretty remarkable when you step back, you take the 30,000 foot view to see where, how quickly we progress. But man, when you're living it those first couple years and you're not winning a dual meet for, over 2 years, like it's a struggle. It's a struggle. But I think the important thing to note is that we learned from it, we grew from it. And no matter what, win or lose, even to the day, like no matter what, we're going to get better. And that's been our mindset. It's really been a lot of fun, man.
Dude, it looks like you guys are having a good time for sure. And it's easy to see that. And just like I said, assume that it's always been like that, but I'm sure it has not. All right, what advice would you have for a young coach taking over a program in a mid-major like you did? What would be the first thing you tell them to do? Like, what would be like, okay, before you get on the recruiting trail, before you make a phone call, you have to do this?
Find someone that has had a great deal of success, and it doesn't have to be in your industry, but find someone that has done what you're trying to do and come up with a strategic plan. So we spent our first 6 months, give or take, working on our 5-year strategic plan when I first arrived at Cal Poly. And it was hard, man. I've never been associated with anything of that order. So I was really good at getting all of my crazy ideas down on paper. And I worked with a gentleman, Dr. Leo Selker, who is remarkable and big wrestling guy, retired, lived down the street here from us. And I was able to connect with him, and he helped me organize my thoughts and put together a legitimate strategic plan. And I think with that, it's a living document. It always changes through the years. But with that, we have something that we can go back to and say, hey, you know what? This is what we said we're going to do. We got to make sure that we're doing it, and just following through. So that's probably what made the biggest impact on me personally and our program at large, is the fact that we actually had a plan. It wasn't trying to figure it out. It wasn't, we were learning a ton and we were growing, but we had direction. We kept coming back to our 3 pillars from an organization, and that's making sure that, we have strategic recruiting. We're making sure that we're recruiting the right guys. We're not going to waver. Here's what we said we're going to do, and we're going to do it. Student athlete development with the core values that I mentioned earlier. Like, this is the way we're going to lead. We're going to lead by example, and we're going to hold these guys accountable based on our core values. And then, of course, the philanthropy, right? Making sure that we have a long-term vision. We got short-term needs, but we have a long-term vision with our fundraising and where can these monies go to make the biggest impact on our program. So we essentially divided our time into those 3 pillars, and making sure that we're just progressing and we're moving forward. And, and as you start to hit some benchmarks and some milestones, you celebrate, right? We like to have a good time. We do something really cool, whether it's landing a top recruit or winning a big match or getting a significant gift, and we celebrate. We try to enjoy the wins, and then we shake it off and we get back to work and we keep moving forward. So yeah, so just to circle back, I think having a plan, having a legitimate strategic plan was probably the smartest thing that we did from day one, and just providing direction for our program.
I talked to Scott Goodale at Rutgers not too long ago, and he and I were kind of reminiscing, right? And we were talking about his first year or two at Rutgers, and he landed a kid that was one of my athletes. I was coaching at a club level. This kid named Scott Winston, who was like a Jersey phenom, right? Undefeated in high school, one of the top recruits in the country. I don't know that Rutgers wrestling would be what it is today in the Big Ten if they don't land that recruit right as soon as Scott gets to Rutgers. I think you guys are on the precipice of like perennially being a national force. Do you think that do you ever get the notion that, like, man, we are one blue chip away from being top 5, getting a trophy, top 4? Does that thought ever cross your mind, or are you just kind of always head down?
I think that's a great question, right? Because we naturally, as humans, we always want more. And we're more focused on our progress and moving forward and doing it the right way. And a lot of our success has been because of that. But back to your point, though, as far as, landing top recruits early on, I mean, there's some luck involved, no doubt about it, right? I mean, you don't know what you don't know. You can bet these kids as much as you want, but until you get them on campus and spend a year with them, it's very challenging. I mean, the recruiting trail is probably the most challenging part of our jobs. But, we did have some luck. We had some guys that were on the roster that were hard workers and had a great deal of success. Tom Lane comes to mind. He was able to end up being a COVID All-American, had some nice wins, and just bought into what we were doing from day one, and, really just kind of put this program on the map. I mean, if I remember correctly, when he had his breakout tournament at the championships, I'm pretty sure we qualified one guy, and it was him, and now he's wrestling in the quarterfinals at the NCAAs, and people are like, Cal Poly, who are these guys, and then it kind of segued, and then, we landed a couple of big recruits. And then, of course, Bernie Truax was, the kid that came in and just kept progressing and continues to progress and is just built different and, has some really early career success. And so we're able to parlay that. But our program will never be about one or two individuals, right? I mean, it's a collective whole. And that's what I think was so cool about, these past couple of weeks, and we're having some success from a dual meet standpoint, is because we have 10 guys that go out there and wrestle hard for 7 minutes, and win or lose, I mean, it is fun, right? Like, it's a collective effort, and not just the 10 guys on the mat. You're talking about, the 13, 14 in your travel party, and then the guys back in the room that are pushing on, that are next.
Are you going to talk about the student section and how they bark at? They are, first of all, my son, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
I gotta talk about it. My son loves sitting in the student section for no other reason than just the fact that they get on the officials, they get on the opposing team. My son has like a list of things that have been said in the Cal Poly student section, the top of which was, get him a pillow down there, it looks like he's sleeping. Like, there's just like a laundry list of incredible sayings that he's heard in there. So it's not just the guys on the bench, by the way. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. So I think you can't hide passion, right? And, when you're working collectively towards a common goal, I think you can't help but get physically and emotionally involved. I was so sore on Monday, and I was like, why am I sore? And I started stepping through the photos from the dual meets on Friday and Sunday. I'm like, well, of course I'm sore. I mean, you could see me just like, tight, and it's just, you get so into these matches, and I try to work really hard of, maintaining my cool, but it's just, it's challenging when you spend so much time with these guys and you want nothing more for them just to wrestle to their potential. And then when they start to do so, it's remarkable. I want to celebrate with those guys for sure. But just to circle back, I think not one person will ever define our program, right? So we actually broke into the top 25 before Evan Wick transferred in. Evan Wick came in. We saw some time in the top 10, had a remarkable final season with us, and he graduates, he joins our coaching staff. And then this year, Dom Demas, who's a 2-time All-American, joins us. So, it seems to be this perpetual, place where we're getting not just one, or it's not a Evan Wick show and then it dies back out. I mean, this is year after year. We're putting these building blocks in place. We're keeping the guys around. Evan's beating the best guys in the world right now in the senior circuit, and having Coach Jon Sioredas with our RTC and Coach Lee Kemp. It's just each year we're just progressing forward, and I think that's probably the most important thing to note, is that we're continuing to build. This is not, hey, we got 1 or 2 superstars, we got a few points at NCAAs, look at us. Like, no, we're a problem. We can put out 10 guys that wrestle hard. We feel like we can wrestle with almost anyone in the country, and we have some superstars. And like I keep mentioning, I mean, we do it the right way with the right people. I mean, our incoming GPA average is a 4.2. So our guys are brilliant.
It's good, Joel. Joel, is that good? That's good. 4.2. Good. I don't know.
Yeah. So to see our guys graduate with a meaningful degree, to go out and get amazing jobs and careers and be entrepreneurs, et cetera, et cetera. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. So, so that part is neat. This is the 4th institution I've coached at, and it is by far the only one that has been this rigorous from an academic standpoint. Matter of fact, after this interview, I do have to go meet with the head of admissions for one of our, trying to get a special admit into school and go to bat for him and, prove that he can come in and handle the workload on top of, the athletic portion as well too. So it's an interesting spin. So we're having success, but we're also doing it with guys that are staying out of trouble, and we're doing it with, kids that go to class and, graduate with meaningful degrees. So that part to me is pretty remarkable.
I agree.
Hey, John.
I have a ton more, but Joel, you got something?
Yeah, I'm curious. I know that you mentioned, early on it was kind of slow starting, and kind of your backbone behind how you were operating was your strategic plan. How did you go about getting both athletes and administrators, to buy into your plan, even when it was taking some time to work through some of the growing pains?
That's a really good question. I think from a recruiting standpoint, you need to, when you cast vision, you tend to attract believers, and guys like Bernie Truax and Legend Lamer and Antonio Lorenzo, these were all high-end recruits that we were on, that were also looking at bigger programs. And, we just wanted to find guys that wanted to be part of building something. And be able to look back and say, hey, when I got there, they weren't very good. And when I left, man, it was an amazing run. It was an amazing ride. Just, the trajectory of our program, not just competitively, but every single measurable. I mean, when these guys, first got here, I mean, just the small things, right? Like gear and apparel, like they had one singlet and in a raggedy t-shirt. Now these guys are spoiled rotten with their gear. Like we're building out a brand new locker room. We just redid our dungeon, which is our lounge, and they go down there to drill. The guys are being taken care of each year better and better. And those are all the things that I think are really, really attractive to the believers. Now, don't get me wrong. There's still quite a few guys that have their mindset on Power 5 or, programs that are already nationally ranked, or et cetera, et cetera. But I think we're able to successfully pinpoint those guys and cherry pick them. And then from an administrative and even donor standpoint, not much different. I think showing that we had a plan already separates us from most. And then just constant communication saying, hey, like competitive success is always, the delayed gratification. That's always the thing that happens last. Like, let's not even think about judging us on wins or losses until we have one full recruiting cycle. So 5 years down the road, I think we can start to look back and say, hey, here's some things we need to do better. Here's some things we're doing a great job of. And our administration has been nothing short of great to us. I mean, they've been very patient. They've helped us along. Like, they've doubled down on wrestling from a resource standpoint. They're out hustling on our behalf. And perfect example is not just this last match, but almost every home match, plus the NCAA championships. The president of our institution are at these matches, and he's at the championships. The vice president's there. We had the dean of the business school, just a number of support staff and admin. So they like their wrestling here in San Luis Obispo.
That's pretty awesome. Ethan Rotundo. Let's talk a little bit about Ethan Rotundo. You mentioned the Demases and the Evan Wicks of the world. Well, this is another pickup from Wisconsin that, let's be honest, first part of the season, little bit rocky, right? But what happened? Something happened in this kid that I don't know how to explain it, but it just looks like, oh no, he realized he can win. He realized he can muscle through some of these matches and win. Something happened somewhere in the middle of the season where he just decided he was going to win wrestling matches. What happened?
I think that was it. He made the decision. Matter of fact, him and our 184-pounder had lost a string of matches, and they went to each other. And I found about this after the fact, by the way. They had a little conversation with each other, and they said, enough's enough. Enough's enough. Like, we need to go out there. We need to do better. And they both turned the corner. But, in Ethan's example, he was at another program for 5 years, in and out of the lineup, had some freestyle success, but we recruited him based on his work ethic and, just remarkable young man. And I mean, unbelievable worker. I mean, he's that one guy we call him the junkyard dog, by the way. He's the one guy in the room that just does not get tired. Like, he just goes and after practice and, just his warm up. If you ever get a chance over these next couple of tournaments, like, see what his warm up looks like after he weighs in. Like, it is next level how hard he goes. Like myself or Coach Tui have to put him through like crazy hard warm-ups to get his motor going. But he's starting to reap the fruits of his labor, man. And it's nice to see, you know, and guys like him, I truly believe it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I'm very, very pleased. And, you know, him turning the corner because it's just showing the world and everyone else what he's been up to in our wrestling room since he arrived last summer. And the kid has earned everything that he's getting. And he is just a rock star in every single measurable. I know he's got a job lined up for after he graduates, but I'm going to try like heck to keep him on board at least for a year if we can, just because, you know, he's an unbelievable leader, unbelievable teammate. I mean, just yesterday, you know, he's getting ready for the Pac-12 championships and, you know, he's done and he's walking over and he grabs some freshmen and he's helping them and he's showing techniques and he's talking them through strategies. And, you know, he's a great roommate and does well academically. So he's that guy, man. He's that guy. So I could not be more happy for him to, you know, starting to, you know, have a high level of success here on the wrestling mat, because it just proves that what he's doing and what we're doing is working.
Do you think that having a kid like that, who like you said, you know, it's a 6-year college wrestling. He's a dude. He's not a kid anymore, right? He's a grown dude. Do you deal with a kid? I say a kid. You know, I just called him a grown man. He is. Do you deal with an athlete like that who struggled a little bit earlier on differently than you would a freshman that struggles a little earlier on? Or is it pretty much you got to let them course correct themselves?
I think our jobs as leaders is to love them no matter what. And, you know, he and a few others struggled this year. You know, I mean, we struggled a little bit early, November, December. And I think they realized very quickly that we're not result driven. Like, it does not matter if you win or lose. What matters is you go out there and wrestle as hard as you possibly can for 7 minutes. And enough of that. And then when they do have failure and they see it as an opportunity to learn, then I think it starts taking some of that anxiety and that stress off, and they're able to free up. They're able to go out there and let it loose and not be so concerned with results and, you know, just self-produced anxiety where they're just fatigued and they're scared to take risk. I think what you're seeing now are, you know, Ethan and a group of guys that are going out there and letting it fly. And if we lose, you know what? Hats off to that guy. Hats off to that team. Good on them. You know what? They're great wrestlers. But it's wrestling, man. Come on. Like, it's wrestling, right? It's a wrestling match. Like, in 10 years, are we going to talk about this? Probably not, right? I mean, it's wrestling. So the important thing to remember is it's what you learn through wrestling. That's where the true value is, right? That's where we try to dial it in. And I think we're getting better and better as coaches and leaders of talking about the right things. And, you know, our messaging is simple. It's like, no matter what, we're going to love you. No matter what, we're going to love each other. We're going to have fun. We're going to play dodgeball. No matter what, we're going to learn and we're going to grow. No matter what, we're going to get better. Like, win or lose, we're going to get better. We're going to watch the film. We're going to tighten up technique and, you know, we're going to progress. And no matter what, as long as you wrestle 7 minutes as hard as you can, nothing changes. And it's working. It's absolutely working. And that's probably what I'm most proud of, is putting out 10 guys that are going to go out there and give it their best. And they walk off the mat. And if you notice, they're not so beat up about losing. Like, when they walk off the mat, they might be a little frustrated, you know, hey, I made a mistake, or, you know, we give them a hug, we shake their hand and we move on, you know, and I think there's a lot of value there. And I think we lose sight on that, not just in wrestling, but in sports in general. You know, I have an 11-year-old and I'm very particular when he talks about, you know, being result driven. I'm like, you know, how about we're focusing on our attitude and our effort and growing, right? And let's be respectful. And as long as you do those things, we're going to have fun. And it translates, you know, into high school and then also, you know, into college. And then most importantly, after you graduate, right? So I think those are the key messages that we're trying to get across. And it's definitely working for us.
Okay. I'd like to play devil's advocate there for a second. What happens? You got this one recruit, California kid, checks every box. But this is a hypothetical. Okay. Checks every box that you're looking for in a Mustang wrestler. But when you sit down with mom and dad and you start telling them that we're focusing on progress, I want to give effort, we're not results driven, it doesn't jive with them. You're talking to the crazy wrestling dad. You know what I'm talking about. Okay. How do you still massage that relationship, so to speak, but at the same time, let them know that I genuinely don't care how many wins your kids get. I genuinely don't. This is about progress. This is about ultimately creating good people. Because some crazy ass dads don't like to hear that, coach. You know that as well as I do. Okay. And as much as specialization in sports has raised the skill level, okay, it has also raised the expectations, and a lot of those expectations are in the form of wins and losses. Some of these dads are going to tell you that they've spent six figures over the last X amount of years taking their kids to this coach and that coach and they want a return on investment.
For sure. So I would say that we have both. So just to spin it quickly, I want to preface it by saying we'll recruit some kids we're not sure of, and then we'll sit down and we'll talk to the kid and we'll talk to the parents, and they understand growth. They understand development. They understand leadership. They understand the bigger picture, and we'll double down on these guys. We will double down. We will find a way to get them on campus and to get them in a Cal Poly singlet. And on the flip side, and you guys know as well as I do, a lot of these stars have some parents that are extremely involved. And so
you're a good politician.
Yeah, so there's a couple
on it. Right. Proceed, coach.
There's a couple strategies that I've kind of cherry picked through the years. One of them being find some time with the kid away from the parents, right? And these recruiting visits, the parents are sitting in every meeting. They're, so we try to split them up and we try to sit down and spend some time with the recruit, with the student athlete, and ask some big questions and see if it's a fit. Number one. Number two, I think it comes down to also, do we get along, right? Likability, like, is there, do you see a path forward to develop trust? Because another thing I cherry picked many years ago, I went up to a superstar coach and asked him, hey, what do you look for in a recruit? And he's like, looks at me like I'm crazy. I was just a kid at the time. He's like, you got to like them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. I've been coaching for a couple of years and we're recruiting these kids we don't really like, but they're really good at wrestling. And then what happens is you don't end up spending time with them. So, we try to find kids that we like, and then we grow and we end up loving them. And what do you do when you love someone or something? You spend time with them. Right. And I think that's key to development. And I think people change. I think we have a couple kids on our team throughout the years where maybe, parents were not exactly on the same page for whatever reason, or did things a little bit differently. But now sometimes it's a fresh start. The student athlete gets to come into a program that has a rock solid foundation, and more importantly, teammates that are moving in the right direction, because you are who you surround yourself with, and they can course correct very quickly. And a lot of times a program like ours is the best thing that ever happened to some of these student athletes. And then we also have the group that comes in that, they're leaders right out of the gate, remarkable parents, remarkable high school coaches, and they know the best way of doing things. And the cool thing is everything we're doing ultimately leads to success, right? It leads to, competitive success. It leads to graduating at a high level. I mean, all these things are transferable. So we're not asking people to change for, just to win some matches. We're asking people to change for the better, right? When you look at this thing holistically. So I guess the short answer is if you're sitting in our office, we've done our due diligence, we vetted you, we typically got quite a bit of information, and we'll sit down and we'll talk through some things. And I think obvious red flags that we will not waver on is if we sense someone will likely violate one of our core values, right? Like effort's a big one. If someone's, on campus and we kind of sense that, they're a little checked out, right? You have to ask the question, is this the beginning or is this the end? So the dad that spent six figures, we got our scholarship, this is it, we made it, right? No, we want guys that are coming in like, let's get to work, right? Regardless if you're on zero or a full ride or anything in between, like, this is the beginning. This is absolutely the beginning. And so those are the types of questions we try to delve into. And we won't waver. If a kid comes to campus and is asking to go to parties, I'm out. There's no pressure on us to win now, nor will there ever be, because we're going to take our time. We're going to do it the right way with the right people. So I know I keep coming back to that, but we've had top 100 recruits sitting right here in my office. and that wanted to come, and we stopped recruiting them because we just sensed that, they were not on the same page from a core value standpoint, whether they just had zero interest in academics, wanted to go out and party. You could asking too many questions about the beach and the girls. And, it's like, we're here for two reasons, right? And that's to get a meaningful degree and to compete at our highest level. And we'll have fun. It's just us having fun looks different. We'll go to the beach and play ultimate frisbee. Our guys can't afford to go out on the weekends because then you start getting caught behind with school. It starts to pile up. So the lifestyle is a little bit different. So those are the things that we're really, really look at to determine if someone's going to be a great fit. And we miss, man. I'll be the first one to tell you. We absolutely miss. It's a numbers game.
You can't not. It's
Right. We miss. And so here's the coolest thing about missing. So we bring in roughly 8 kids per year. We get 8 slots to get them into school. We normally got to use all 8. But, if there's 1 or 2 that have wavered or are kind of bent in a certain direction or just make some poor decisions, we don't just trim the fat and move on. We give these guys more than a fair shake to change. We provide them time, we provide them opportunity, we'll provide them guidance. We'll bring them in and we'll sit down and say, hey, listen, what's going on? You're struggling in school, you're getting your butt kicked in the wrestling room, and typically, there's something else that's a little bit deeper. We try to delve in and find what the real problem is. And I think that allows us to build a stronger relationship, develop trust. And, and sometimes it doesn't work out. There's just not enough value to them of being here, and that's fine. But I tell you what, most of the time they get their footing and they find their way. I was one of those guys. I mean, you're 18 years old. In college with a ton of freedom, right? No, going to class a couple hours a day. You got practice, but there's no, there's just a lot of mistakes to be made. The question is, do we learn from them? Do we grow from them? Are we going to course correct and make sure we're moving in the right direction? So we make sure that we have our guys back, even when it disappoints us. As long as they know what they did was wrong and they learn from it, then we'll move forward. Now, if it's a character flaw, then we'll probably, write up the separation agreement and go our separate ways. But for the most part, we've been able to keep a pretty tightly knit culture here.
Go ahead.
Building off of culture there, I've been lucky enough to be able to come and check out a couple of your practices, and hopefully I'm not giving away any of the secret sauce here, but I know that you've mentioned that you're really excited that you've gotten to a point where you can give these kids a lot of freedom, right? And you can have sometimes an unstructured practice where you just show up and get to work, right? I think you mentioned that kind of the strength and conditioning is a similar direction. How do you get to a point where you're able to trust your guys to be able to do that? Is that kind of a step-by-step thing, or is that something where you kind of test them and maybe it's a push and pull? What does that process look like of being able to go from very structured to kind of unstructured?
It's definitely a process for sure. It was always my dream to be able to come into a wrestling room, look at our guys, high five a couple, and just say, hey, let's get moving. And they have a hard warm up, they have a hard drill, get a sip of water, get after it a little bit. We have plenty of days like that. And if you look at the highest level of wrestling, they have plenty of days like that too, right? The post grads, they know what they need for the most part, but also there's value in coaching. So what I've learned over the past 2 or 3 years, we almost provided too much autonomy to where,
autonomy.
Yes, autonomy. Yeah, too much freedom. Yeah, too much freedom. Where the guys, they come in and they got it in, they went hard, but we were so hands off for a little while there. I think we got a little stagnant. These kids want to be coached, right? And I think everyone needs a coach. I have a coach. Everyone needs a coach, and we had to coach a little bit harder, and that doesn't necessarily mean blowing the whistle and yelling at them, but what that means is a little bit more structure. So, typically on Wednesdays, if we're not competing, we'll provide a ton of freedom. A lot of times on Wednesdays, we'll give them a flex day and they'll just go to the beach and hang out, and just recoup and disconnect and recalibrate. But they also know, Monday and Tuesday, we're going to get after it, and Thursday we're going to, push a little bit and then start to taper. So I think we became more structured. Learning that there is such thing as too much freedom, because our guys, they're so self-motivated for the most part, where a lot of times we're trying to pull them back and, just kind of fine tune them. But there's also an extreme amount of value of being in there together, whether that's the weight room or the wrestling room, training together, pushing each other, looking around, suffering together, and learning and growing together. And that's what we try to create. We try to get the best of both worlds. I still think just knowing what I know about other coaches that I've been associated with in teams and programs, we probably provide a little bit more flexibility than most. But our guys have earned it. They 100% earned it. But we also coach our guys too. Like we are very involved technically from a conditioning standpoint, talking a lot about strategy, match prep. There's just a number of things. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that I spend a great deal of my time with our kids. We got to a point where the structure is continuing to improve, but at the end of the day, we need to be pouring into our guys, right? It's like, hey, make a fundraising call or go do an individual drill. I'll never have that conversation with myself. The fundraising call can hold, right? We pour into our student athletes. But great question. There's no perfect practice. I'll end with this. There's no perfect formula. At the end of the day, just like I have to look myself in the mirror, these kids got to wake up. They got to look themselves in the mirror and know that they're getting out of it as much as they possibly can. And they can't point outwards. They can't say, hey, we didn't work on this, or, practice was too hard, or, you didn't push us hard enough, right? Like, you got to make the best of your situation. And, we as a staff, I think, based on our experiences, we can come up with some pretty good practice plans. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to put the work in. I think our guys understand that.
That's interesting. You mentioned before, and this kind of stuck with me. Is this the beginning or is this the end? And that's the question that you have to ask these recruits. Now, you don't get every single one of the top 100 on your campus, but I want you to think of the list of the top 100 high school wrestlers in the country. If you had to guess, what percentage of them is it the end?
That is a great question. So I think I can speak based on the percentages that we end up with here in other programs that I've coached. I think we probably do a better job than many on trying to make that read. But like I mentioned earlier, we miss. And there's probably, anywhere from 15 to 25% that find themselves in a rut or stuck and going through the motions, and they would never quit wrestling, either A, because they have a scholarship, or B, because that's all they ever known, or C, because their parents and high school coach would be disappointed. Likely a combination of all three, right? But here's the coolest thing. So we had this one specific student athlete checked out about 2 years, phenomenal athlete, fantastic wrestler, great human being, wonderful in academics, like every measure of what we just couldn't quite get through to him. He just would show up to practice and he'd kind of just go through the motions, and then he'd wrestle some matches, and it is what it is. And and something magical happened about 2 years in. I don't know what it was. I'm still trying to figure it out, but he turned the corner. And I'd like to think that he got to a point where he needs to make a decision. If I'm going to do it, let's do it. Let's do it to the best of my ability at the highest level. So he turns the corner. We go to this major tournament, just starts popping off nationally ranked win after nationally ranked. And I'm like, at this point, my job is just to get out of his way, right? Like me and Coach Chewy are looking at each other. We're like, what is going on? Like, this is magical. Let's just not say anything. And it was like a nice handshake before the match and a handshake and a hug after the match. And, and he turned the corner. And then all of a sudden, he starts showing up for a little bit more and asking for an individual drill, watching some, technique videos together. And then now, we built this trust and this bond to where we're just kind of learning from each other, and we're just getting better and better and better, and we're analyzing, and it's awesome. So those are the stories that come to mind that I'm probably most grateful for, because here's someone that didn't necessarily love wrestling for whatever reason, bad high school experience, maybe been wrestling too long, but had a great deal of success. So if I'm at fault for anything, it's for not giving up on these guys ever. That's probably my biggest flaw, is I would not give up on them. I mean, we've had conversations of pulling guys out of the lineup. We had conversations of cutting scholarships. We have conversations of, trying to, change this, that, or the other. And at the end of the day, I'm not giving up on them. And I think situations like these make it so worth it, because now not only are we getting a lot of productivity out of the weight class, but more importantly, we got a guy that that learned and grew and got better and just started to lean into something that maybe wasn't necessarily wanting to do so early on. And so when guys change like that, I think that's why we coach, right? Like, you got to ask yourself, why do we do what we do, right? And that's what comes to mind, like seeing someone like that, like literally just change the trajectory of his wrestling career, and probably of his life, honestly, because now he's going to look back at his wrestling experience and have a sense of pride and be grateful, and hopefully give back in some capacity. I know that's what happened to me. So it's pretty interesting concept there, but that's what it's all about, man.
Talk to me, Joel. What else, brother?
Yeah, I'm curious. So obviously you guys are now top 25 kind of the past couple of years, and with the way sports are heading in general of kind of becoming more of a business, right? Where, there's donors that you have to manage, there's, the talent that you have to manage. And one of the things that we've been talking about is, building culture and really caring and investing in these kids. And how do you balance the business side of it, of needing to, be successful on a recurring basis? Obviously you started to do that here over the last few years. And I'm sure that the pressure on you and on your coaching staff just continues to build, right? Of you've had some success, now you want more success. And as that translates down to the kids, how does that balance between still caring about these kids as individuals and their personal growth and development, but also realizing that, like, hey, like, you got to fit in, and sometimes you do got to perform here, and kind of hold up your end of the bargain?
College athletics is 100% a business. 100%. And I think if you look at the best coaches across the board, they run their programs like a business. And you have recruiting, you have retention, right? You have fundraising, you got to, deal with administrators and alumni, essentially your board. You got to make hires. I mean, it is 100% a business, and trying to strengthen that structure is our top priority for sure. And that includes everyone involved. You're talking about support staff who, most cases you don't have a hand in who your support staff's going to be in all these different areas, right? Same thing with administration, same thing with a lot of these alumni donors. So what you try to do is just be the glue to get everyone together. And I think our job is to get people excited, right? Get people excited. And when you have a sense of excitement and you're moving in the right direction, I think that takes care of a lot of the smaller issues, and we can dig in as needed. But I spend a lot of time thinking about the structure of our program. We look different. We look different from other schools in the top 25. We obviously look vastly different from Power 5 schools, right? And not just from a budget standpoint, but, from a support staff, from capital projects, from, almost every single measure. So what's our competitive advantage, right? And it goes back to the strategic plan. How are we going to compete with the best guys? They can outspend us. Their weight room's 10 times bigger than ours. They just have a number of advantages on paper. So we need to figure out what we can do in order to help close that gap. And I think it comes down to people. That's what I've learned. I think you find people that can move the needle, and that starts with your coaches, right? That's who you spend the most time with. And then it trickles down to your recruits and to your student athletes. And then also, others too. And we work with Dr. Coy Cooper. He's our performance coach. And, he was working mostly pro bono with our guys off and on last year. We brought him on full time this year. And, that's our biggest competitive advantage right now, is he spends time with our guys one-on-one. I've been working with him for almost a decade. And he really dials it in, and like how we're thinking about things, our approach, our mindset, and just making sure that, we're crystal clear and just trying to, alleviate some of the stresses and anxiety. And I think that's our biggest competitive advantage right now. Probably not the sexiest thing. I know recruits aren't thinking about, performance coaches and mindset and meditation and daily habits, but we bring it up. I'm seeing what the interest level is. The cool thing is our best guys do it. I do it. My staff does it. We are dialed in. And I think if you look at the best program in our country, I think they do it, right? So there's something there, for sure. And that's where we spend our time. We spend our time in the area that makes the biggest impact. Just a small example is before practice, our guys were up and walking, and it's just, some deep breaths. We're clearing out some of the clutter, doing a little bit of gratitude and then a little bit of focus work before we get going. It's just a small period of time. We do it before our matches. We're starting to do it after practice, but it's something that differentiates us from most. And it allows our guys just to really focus in on what their goal is for the day. And from a business standpoint, that's our competitive advantage. right? So so that's kind of the way I look at it. Of course, we're always trying to get more, right? And we are. I mean, we're breaking a lot of records with, with recruiting classes and fundraising and competitive success. And, we got, front office leadership at our events, and number of alumni coming back is 10x. And, there's a lot of great things happening, which is really cool, but we cannot compete with the best programs when they just have more stuff, right? So we need to find the avenues of, what's going to be our distinct advantage. How are we going to differentiate from these guys? What's going to be our biggest competitive advantage? And that's where we spend our time. That's where I spend my time.
That's interesting now. That's interesting. We got to get moving here soon, but I got one. We're in the postseason, brother. We're in it. I'm ready for postseason wrestling. I'm ready. What does it look like? You've been part of teams that have not had success at the NCAA tournament. You've been part of teams that have had success at the NCAA tournament. What is the biggest difference in the wrestling room, the day-to-day, leading up to the postseason, on the teams that you've had success with and teams that you haven't had success with?
So I think we have to continue to keep the same, if not similar, messaging that no matter what happens. I mean, even, Pac-12s, there's going to be a lot of stress because you get certain number of allotments and guys are thinking about who's bringing spots, who's not bringing a spot. Can I steal a spot? How'd I do against this guy a couple of weeks ago? We try to eliminate that noise, right? Like, no matter what, we're going to go out there. And if you go to NCAAs, awesome. Like, great. If you don't, no problem. Like, we're still going to get better, right? We'll get back to work. Same thing at the championships. You get the NCAAs, let's just go out there and free up and wrestle to our potential, to the best of our ability. And, if we happen to go deep in the tournament, like, awesome, man. It's good for our fans. It's good for, it feels good. But at the end of the day, I think you can walk off the mat feeling pretty darn good, win or lose, knowing you gave it your best effort. And that's all it comes down to. So the teams that I've had the most success with, we go out there, we just let it fly. And because of that, I think there are a lot of folks out there, I would argue most, right, come postseason, it's just a little bit more stress, a little bit more nerves, a little bit more anxiety, where we try to reframe that, right? Like, yeah, you're nervous. That means you care. You care about this incredible opportunity. It's like, how cool is this? How many people get to wrestle at the NCAA championships, right? How many people get to wrestle at the Pac-12 championships? Like what a great opportunity, and like, it would be an injustice if you didn't go out there and do your best because you're worried about an outcome or winning or losing. Like, who cares? Like, I can honestly, for the first time in a long time, say it is awesome when you win. It feels cool. We'll hug you, but it's not the end all be all. Like, we win a lot of matches because we go out there, we let it fly, and whatever happens, man. Like, we're competitors. I think we all want to win. I think we all want to be All-Americans and national champs, and it's great. But, we don't lead with that. That on the back end, we'll celebrate it. Say, hey, you know what? Kind of cool. Like, kind of cool. Like, it's really cool. But it does not define who you are as a person, and it will not define who we are as a program. What defines us just circles back to our core values, right? Just, being, positive and passionate and with our attitude and giving forth our best effort, having a growth mindset, measured improvement, and being respectful. Like, we're going to respect each other. We're going to respect our competitors. We're going to respect our sport. We're going to respect our institution. So, and I think we do a great job of all those measurables. And it's just been a lot of fun, man. That's what I'm having more fun now than I've ever had coaching, because I feel like we're growing together, and that's me included.
Joel, I think we got it.
That's a great one to end on.
That was good. Coach, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the broadcast team at Cal Poly. Thank you for what you're doing for the sport too. It's really important.
My pleasure. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much.